The radio signals from Earth had been the same for 300 years. Basic mathematical sequences, simple greetings in dozens of languages, and scientific data that any spacefaring civilization would consider primitive. The Galactic Councils. Xenobiology department had long since classified humanity as a species stuck in early technological development, unable to break free from their single star system despite centuries of apparent effort. Dr. Kellen adjusted his translation matrix. As another burst of Earth communications reached his monitoring station on Proxima Station. The humans were broadcasting again, this time about some achievement involving their moon colonies. Their excitement was almost childlike as they described moving a few thousand people to a lifeless rock barely a few light seconds away from their homeworld. Most galactic civilizations had abandoned such crude colonization methods before they even developed proper spacefl IGHT. The data stream showed Earth's current technology level in embarrassing detail. Their fastest ships moved at roughly 10% of light speed using chemical rockets and primitive fusion drives. Their weapons were kinetic projectiles and nuclear devices that would barely scratch the hull of a modern patrol vessel. Even their communication systems relied on electromagnetic radiation, a technology so outdated that most species had evolved past it millions of years ago. Commander Reth of the Corvan Empire studied the same reports from his command center on the war moon Devastator. The intelligence was clear and consistent across all observations. Earth possessed no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no particle weapons, and no apparent understanding of dimensional physics. Their military consisted of chemical-powered aircraft and ground vehicles that moved slower than a Corvan soldier could run. The strategic value of the Sol system was undeniable. 3 major hyperspace routes intersected near Earth's position, making it a perfect staging ground for further Corvan expansion into the outer spiral arms. The system contained abundant resources, including rare elements that Earth's inhabitants were too primitive to properly exploit. Best of all, the native population appeared docile and technologically inferior, perfect for integration into the Corvan labor force. Admiral Voss had been granted 40 warships for the Earth operation, a force that seemed excessive for conquering a world that couldn't even defend itself properly. The intelligence report suggested that Earth's entire defensive capability consisted of a few orbital platforms armed with kinetic weapons and perhaps 50 patrol vessels scattered throughout their system. The humans had no unified military command, no advanced early warning systems, and no apparent knowledge that hostile forces might be approaching their world. The preliminary surveys had been conducted from beyond the system's edge, using passive sensors to avoid detection. Earth's inhabitants seemed completely unaware that they were being watched and evaluated. Their communications remained unencrypted, their military movements were predictable, and their technology showed no signs of advancement beyond the primitive level they had maintained for centuries. What the galactic observers didn't know was that every signal from Earth had been carefully crafted. The mathematical sequences were deliberately simple, designed to suggest a species that had discovered basic physics but failed to grasp its more advanced applications. The scientific data was real but carefully selected to show only technologies that Earth wanted the galaxy to see. The excited broadcasts about moon colonies were performed by actors, while the real colonization efforts extended far beyond what any observer could detect. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities that had been carved from solid rock and shielded from all known forms of detection, humanity's true technological achievements remained hidden. The primitive radio signals were generated by quantum transmitters that could communicate instantaneously across galactic distances. The slow chemical rockets were deliberately inefficient versions of propulsion systems that could achieve faster than light travel. The kinetic weapons were carefully designed to appear crude while hiding targeting systems that could track objects moving at relativistic speeds. General Pike sat in the primary command center, watching as the latest Corvan scouting probe approached the system's outer boundary. The probe's sensors were advanced by galactic standards, but they were designed to detect conventional technology. They passed harmlessly through the network of gravitational sensors and quantum detection, grids that actually protected Earth, registering nothing more threatening than background radiation and the occasional FEAOOID. The deception had taken centuries to perfect. Earth's scientists had discovered faster-than-light communication within decades of developing radio, but they had continued broadcasting primitive signals to maintain the illusion of technological stagnation. Their first interstellar vessels had been launched in secret, establishing hidden colonies and observation posts throughout the local stellar neighborhood. The moon bases that excited Earth's broadcasters were real, but they were merely the visible portion of a civilization that had quietly spread across dozens of star systems. Admiral Stone reviewed the final preparations as reports flowed in from across the Sol system. The orbital defense platforms were fully operational, their true capabilities hidden beneath layers of holographic camouflage and sensor dampening fields. The patrol vessels were in position, their hulls configured to appear slow and clumsy while concealing propulsion systems that could outmaneuver any known spacecraft. The mining stations on asteroids and outer planets were ready to reveal their true nature as heavily armed fortress worlds. The trap had been set with infinite patience and meticulous attention to detail. Earth's apparent weakness was its greatest strength, drawing aggressive civilizations into a false sense of security while humanity prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The Corvan Empire had been selected as the perfect test case, aggressive enough to launch an unprovoked attack, but not so powerful that their defeat would destabilize the entire galaxy. The quantum communication network carried final status reports from every hidden facility in the system. Earth's defensive capabilities far exceeded anything the galaxy had ever seen, but they remained invisible to conventional sensors. The humans had learned to fight a war that their enemies didn't even know was happening, using weapons that appeared to be something else entirely until the moment they revealed their true purpose. As the Corvan fleet began its approach toward Earth, Admiral Stone activated the system-wide communication grid. Across the Sol system, thousands of installations received the same message simultaneously, their quantum receivers processing instructions that would have seemed impossible to any galactic observer. The quiet world was about to become very loud indeed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Corvan invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of metal predators. 40 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to asteroids. Fleet Admiral Voss watched from the bridge of the Dreadnought Dominator as his tactical displays updated with fresh intelligence about their target. Earth hung in the void like a blue marble, seemingly defenseless and unaware of the approaching threat. The planet's electromagnetic emissions continued their steady stream of primitive communications, showing no signs that its inhabitants had detected the Corvan fleet. Long-range sensors confirmed the intelligence reports about Earth's pathetic defensive capabilities. A few dozen orbital platforms drifted lazily around the planet, their energy signatures so weak they barely registered on Corvan instruments. The human patrol vessels were exactly as described in the preliminary surveys. Slow, clumsy ships that moved through space with all the grace of wounded animals. Their hulls appeared to be constructed from basic metal alloys, their weapons were simple kinetic projectors, and their engines produced energy signatures that belonged in a museum of primitive technology. The largest human vessel was barely a tenth the size of a Corvan cruiser, and it moved so slowly that it would take hours to travel between Earth and its moon. Intelligence Officer Karn updated the fleet's targeting computers with the latest observations. Earth's defense grid consisted of exactly 47 orbital platforms, each one equipped with what appeared to be railguns and basic missile launchers. The platforms were positioned in a defensive pattern around Earth, but their spacing was so poor that the Corvan fleet could easily maneuver between them. The humans had apparently never studied proper defensive tactics, leaving gaps in their coverage that any competent military force could exploit. The most encouraging discovery was Earth's complete lack of early warning systems. The humans seemed to rely on basic optical telescopes and primitive radar arrays, technology that couldn't even detect ships in hyperspace. The Corvan fleet had approached to within a few light hours of Earth without triggering any apparent defensive response. The planet's inhabitants continued their normal activities, completely unaware that their world was about to be conquered. Admiral Voss authorized the deployment of reconnaissance drones to gather more detailed intelligence about Earth's defensive capabilities. The drones were small, fast, and equipped with advanced sensors that could analyze enemy technology from a safe distance. They spread out across the system, mapping the positions of every human installation and cataloging their apparent capabilities. The results were even more encouraging than expected. Earth's orbital platforms were powered by fusion reactors that produced barely enough energy to maintain basic life support. Their weapons were kinetic projectiles that moved at a fraction of light speed, posing no threat to Corvan vessels with proper shielding. The humans had apparently never developed energy weapons, particle shields, or any of the other technologies that were standard equipment for galactic civilizations. Most amusing was Earth's apparent military command structure. The reconnaissance drones intercepted dozens of communications between human leaders, and the conversations revealed a species in complete disarray. General Pike seemed to be arguing with his subordinates about evacuation procedures, while Admiral Stone was broadcasting desperate pleas for more time to prepare their defenses. The humans were clearly aware that they were outmatched, but they had no idea how completely hopeless their situation truly was. The Corvan fleet began its final approach toward Earth, confident that the conquest would be swift and decisive. The human patrol vessels finally seemed to notice the approaching threat, but their response was exactly what the Corvan tactical computers had predicted. They moved into defensive positions with painful slowness, their formations clumsy and their maneuvers telegraphed, so clearly that any competent enemy could easily counter them. Earth's surface installations began powering up their defensive systems, but the energy signatures were laughably weak. The humans appeared to be activating some kind of planetary shield grid, but their generators produced so little power that they couldn't possibly stop a determined attack. The orbital platforms were charging their weapons, but their targeting systems were so primitive that they would be lucky to hit anything moving faster than a meteoroid. The most pathetic aspect of Earth's defensive response was their communication strategy. General Pike was broadcasting on all frequencies, begging for negotiations and offering to surrender in exchange for the safety of Earth's population. His messages painted a picture of a world that had never been properly prepared for galactic contact, populated by a species that had never truly understood the dangers of their cosmic neighborhood. Admiral Stone's transmissions were slightly more professional, but they revealed the same fundamental weakness. He spoke of Earth's weapons and defensive capabilities, but his own words betrayed their limitations. The humans claimed to have advanced technology, but their own military leader was describing weapons that wouldn't have been effective against Corvan forces centuries ago. The reconnaissance drones completed their survey of the Sol system, confirming that Earth's defensive network was exactly as primitive as it appeared. The humans had built their installations with no understanding of proper military engineering. Their weapons were obsolete by galactic standards, and their personnel were clearly untrained for real combat. The Corvan fleet could complete the conquest in a matter of hours, possibly minutes if the humans proved especially incompetent. As the Corvan warships closed the distance to Earth, their crews prepared for what would surely be one of the easiest victories in Imperial history. The humans had made every possible mistake, from revealing their defensive positions to broadcasting their plans on unencrypted channels. They had built their entire civilization in a single star system, making it impossible to retreat or establish fallback positions. Most importantly, they had never developed the technology needed to defend themselves against a truly advanced military force. The trap was perfect in its simplicity. Earth appeared to be exactly what it seemed, a primitive world populated by a species that had never learned to defend itself properly. The Corvan Empire would add another conquest to its growing list of subjugated worlds. and the galaxy would learn once again that technological superiority was the only thing that mattered in the cosmic arena. Fleet. Admiral Voss gave the order to begin the final assault, confident that Earth's supposed defenses would crumble at the first sign of real opposition. The quiet world was about to discover what happened when primitive civilizations encountered the full might of a galactic superpower. The first Corvan fighters screamed toward Earth's orbital defense platforms with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Squadron leader Torvin led 12 advanced interceptors in a standard attack formation, their weapons charged, and targeting systems locked onto the nearest human installation. The platform appeared to be nothing more than a basic metal structure with a few primitive weapon mounts. Exactly as intelligence had predicted. Everything changed in the space of a single heartbeat. The human platform erupted with streams of projectiles that moved faster than anything Torvin had ever seen. The rounds didn't follow ballistic trajectories like normal kinetic weapons. Instead, they curved and twisted through space like living things, each one guided by targeting systems that seemed to predict exactly where his fighters would be seconds before they arrived there. Torvin's wingman disappeared in a flash of superheated metal as 3 projectiles struck his ship simultaneously. The rounds had somehow penetrated the fighter's particle shielding without triggering any defensive systems, as if the barriers hadn't existed at all. The remaining fighters scattered in all directions, but the human weapons tracked each one. With impossible precision, the platform itself was changing as Torvin watched in horror. What had appeared to be a simple metal structure was reconfiguring itself, revealing weapon systems that belonged in the armories of the most advanced civilizations. The energy readings were climbing beyond anything the Corvan sensors could measure, and the platform was somehow drawing power from sources that didn't appear to exist. Fleet. Admiral Voss stared at his tactical displays in disbelief as the first wave of fighters was systematically destroyed. The human defensive platforms weren't just more advanced than intelligence had suggested. They were operating on technological principles that shouldn't have been possible. The projectiles were achieving faster-than-light velocities while maintaining coherent matter, a feat that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The orbital platforms around Earth began shedding their disguises like snakes molting their skin. Holographic camouflage and sensor dampening fields dissolved to reveal installations that rivaled the most sophisticated military hardware in the galaxy. The weapons that emerged from hidden bays were elegant and deadly, their designs suggesting technological development that had taken millions of years to achieve. Admiral Stone's voice cut through the chaos on all communication frequencies, calm and measured despite the destruction unfolding around his world. Corvan Fleet, this is Admiral Stone of the Terran Defense Force. Your unprovoked attack on our system constitutes an act of war under galactic law. You have 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal, or we will demonstrate why the galaxy should have paid closer attention to the quiet world. The human patrol vessels were transforming as well. Their clumsy external hulls fell away like discarded shells, revealing sleek warships that moved through space with fluid grace. The ships that had appeared slow and primitive moments before were now accelerating at impossible rates, their hulls somehow immune to the gravitational stresses that should have crushed them. Intelligence. Officer Karn's voice cracked with panic as he updated the fleet's threat assessment. Admiral, the human vessels are moving at 70% of light speed and still accelerating. Their hulls are showing no signs of structural stress. Energy signatures are climbing beyond our measurement capabilities. The weapons they're deploying don't match anything in our databases. The largest human vessel approached the Corvan formation, with movements that defied every principle of spacecraft engineering. It twisted and turned through space like a living creature, its hull rippling with energy patterns that suggested technologies far beyond anything the Corvan Empire had encountered. The ship's weapons were already charging, and the power readings were climbing toward levels that could threaten even the mighty DOM-ATO. Admiral Voss ordered his fleet to concentrate fire on the approaching human vessel, hoping to destroy it before it could deploy whatever weapons it was preparing. 20 Corvan warships turned their primary guns toward the enemy, unleashing a barrage of energy that should have vaporized anything in its path. The human ship absorbed the attack like a sponge soaking up water, its hull glowing brighter with each incoming beam. The human vessel's response was unlike anything in Corvan tactical doctrine. Instead of returning fire immediately, it seemed to analyze the incoming energy and then redirect it back toward the Corvan fleet with impossible precision. The redirected beams were somehow more powerful than the original attacks, cutting through 3 Corvan destroyers as if their armor was made of paper. The space around Earth erupted with weapons that belonged in the realm of theoretical physics rather than practical military engineering. Gravitational lances reached out from hidden installations on asteroids and moons, crushing Corvan vessels by manipulating the fundamental forces of space-time. The targeted ships imploded without any visible damage to their hulls, their crews, dying instantly as the artificial gravity fields exceeded the limits of biological tolerance. Quantum disruptors began firing from positions throughout the Sol system, their effects even more terrifying than the gravitational weapons. Corvan vessels simply ceased to exist when struck, their atoms scattered across dimensional boundaries that no known technology could breach. The weapons didn't destroy their targets in any conventional sense. They simply edited them out of reality, leaving behind empty space. Where proud warships had existed moments before, the human defensive network was revealing itself to be far more extensive than any intelligence report had suggested. What the Corvan fleet had dismissed as civilian infrastructure was actually an integrated weapon system that spanned the entire star system. Mining stations on asteroids were revealing massive artillery installations. Communication arrays were actually targeting computers that could track objects moving at relativistic speeds. Even the space elevators connecting Earth to its orbital installations were showing signs of advanced military technology. Most disturbing of all was the coordination between human forces. The entire defensive network operated as a single organism, with each installation perfectly positioned to support the others. The human vessels moved in formations that seemed to anticipate enemy actions before they happened, while their weapons fired with timing so precise that it suggested instantaneous communication across interplanetary distances. Admiral Voss watched in growing horror as his invasion fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy that wasn't supposed to exist. The intelligence reports had been completely wrong. Earth wasn't a primitive world populated by a backward species. It was a military superpower that had been deliberately hiding its true capabilities from the galaxy for centuries. The Corvan Empire's most powerful battle fleet was being destroyed by technologies that shouldn't have been possible. The humans had somehow developed weapons and defenses that surpassed anything in known galactic civilization, and they were using them with the cold efficiency of a species that had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. As another wave of Corvan vessels disappeared into quantum oblivion, Admiral Voss began to understand that this had never been an invasion at all. It had been a trap, and the Corvan Empire had walked into it exactly as the humans had planned. The Corvan Dreadnought Dominator shuddered as another impossible weapon struck its hull. The armor plating that had withstood the combined firepower of entire fleets was being systematically stripped away by human technology that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics with each shot. Admiral Voss gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, the stabilizers unable to compensate for forces that exceeded their design parameters. The human vessels moved through space, like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Their hulls flowed and shifted as they maneuvered, adapting to each new threat with organic fluidity. The adaptive armor that covered their ships learned from every attack, becoming more resistant to Corvan weapons with each passing moment. Energy beams that had torn through the first layer of protection were now being deflected harmlessly into space. Commander Thale reported from the weapons station, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Admiral, our particle cannons are having no effect. The human vessels are somehow absorbing our energy attacks and converting them to power their own systems. The more we shoot at them, the stronger they become. The largest human warship demonstrated this terrifying capability as it approached the Corvin formation. Dozens of energy beams struck its hull simultaneously, their combined power enough to crack a moon. The ship's surface glowed with accumulated energy for several seconds before releasing it. In a devastating lance that cut through the Corvette cruiser annihilator from bow to stern, the beam didn't just destroy the ship, it somehow aged the metal to the point where the entire vessel crumbled into rust and debris. The human weapons defied every principle of galactic military science. Temporal mines drifted through space like soap bubbles, each one containing technology that could manipulate time itself. When they detonated near Corvin vessels, the effects were horrifying to witness. Ships that had been built decades ago suddenly showed centuries of wear and decay. Their hulls corroded in seconds, their systems failed from age rather than damage, and their crews died of old age in the space of heartbeats. Intelligence Officer Karn's console exploded in a shower of sparks as he tried to process the incoming data. Admiral, the human fleet is operating with perfect coordination. Their communication system is instantaneous across the entire star system. They're not using any known form of faster-than-light transmission. It's as if they're sharing a single consciousness. The quantum disruptors were the most terrifying weapons in the human arsenal. They didn't follow any logical pattern of destruction. Instead, they seemed to reach across dimensional boundaries and simply remove their targets from existence. Corvin vessels struck by these weapons didn't explode or burn. They simply stopped being there, leaving behind empty space where thousands of tons of metal and countless lives had existed moments before. Admiral Voss watched in fascination and horror as a human fighter demonstrated the true scope of their technological advancement. The small vessel was surrounded by 6 Corvin interceptors, each one firing at maximum capacity. The human pilot didn't attempt to evade or return fire. Instead, the fighter's hull began to ripple with energy patterns that suggested manipulation of space-time itself. The Corvin interceptors found themselves caught in a localized distortion field that made their weapons fire in slow motion while the human vessel moved at normal speed. The fighter pilot methodically destroyed each enemy ship with precise shots, taking time to ensure that each attack was perfectly aimed. When the distortion field collapsed, the Corvin interceptors were nothing more than expanding clouds of debris. The human defensive installations throughout the Sol system were revealing capabilities that belonged in the realm of science fiction rather than military reality. Asteroid mining stations were actually fortress worlds armed with weapons that could crack planets. The installations on Jupiter's moons were somehow drawing power directly from the gas giant's magnetic field, channeling energies that dwarfed the output of entire star systems. Most disturbing was the realization that the human fleet was holding back. Their weapons were devastating, but they were clearly operating at a fraction of their true potential. The humans were fighting with the casual efficiency of a species that had solved every possible military problem centuries ago. They moved through space with the confidence of beings who had never encountered a threat they couldn't handle. The Corvin fleet's tactical computers were completely overwhelmed by the human technology. The targeting systems couldn't track vessels that moved through folded space-time. The threat assessment algorithms crashed when they tried to analyze weapons that violated fundamental physical laws. Even the communication systems were failing as the humans somehow jammed transmissions while simultaneously intercepting and decoding every Corvin message. Admiral Stone's voice cut through the chaos with the calm authority of someone who had been expecting this moment for decades. Corvin fleet, you are now witnessing a fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities. Your empire chose to attack a world that has spent centuries preparing for this encounter. We have studied your technology, learned your weaknesses, and developed countermeasures for every weapon in your arsenal. The human admiral's words were accompanied by a demonstration that proved the truth of his statement. The remaining Corvin vessels found their weapon systems shutting down one by one as the humans activated some kind of remote override technology. The Corvin ships were being systematically disarmed by an enemy that understood their systems better than they did themselves. The dreadnought Dominator was surrounded by human vessels that moved with predatory grace. Their weapons were charged and ready, but they weren't firing. Instead, they seemed to be studying the Corvan flagship with the clinical interest of scientists examining a primitive artifact. The message was clear: the humans could destroy the remaining Corvan forces whenever they chose, but they were allowing them to survive for reasons of their own. Admiral Voss realized that his invasion fleet had been completely outmatched from the moment they entered the Sol system. The humans had been watching and waiting, allowing the Corvan forces to reveal their capabilities before demonstrating their own overwhelming superiority. The quiet world had lured the galaxy's most aggressive empire into a trap that had been centuries in the making. The surviving Corvan vessels were being herded toward the edge of the star system by human forces that moved with mechanical precision. The humans weren't attempting to capture or destroy the remaining ships. They were allowing them to escape, but only after ensuring that they had witnessed the complete destruction of their fleet. The message they were sending to the galaxy was clear: Earth was no longer the helpless world it had pretended to be as the battered remnants of the Corvan invasion fleet limped toward the hyperspace jump point. Admiral Voss understood that he was carrying news that would change everything. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for centuries, and now they would discover that the quiet world had been the most dangerous civilization among them all along. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Admiral Voss stood before the assembled representatives, his uniform torn and his face bearing the haunted expression of someone who had witnessed the impossible. The surviving crew members of the Corvan invasion fleet told the same story with disturbing consistency. Earth was not the primitive world the galaxy had believed it to be. Ambassador Nix of the Alterian Federation studied the tactical recordings with growing alarm. The footage showed human vessels moving through space with capabilities that exceeded anything in known galactic civilization. The weapons they deployed belonged in theoretical physics journals rather than military arsenals. Most disturbing of all was the coordination between human forces, suggesting a level of communication technology that made instantaneous contact across interstellar distances possible. The recordings revealed the true scope of humanity's deception. The primitive radio signals had been a carefully orchestrated performance designed to hide a civilization that had mastered technologies beyond galactic comprehension. The slow chemical rockets had been camouflaged versions of propulsion systems that could manipulate space-time itself. The basic kinetic weapons had concealed targeting systems that could track objects moving at relativistic speeds. Dr. Kellen, the xenobiology expert who had monitored Earth's communications for decades, presented his analysis to the stunned assembly. The mathematical sequences in human transmissions weren't primitive at all. They were simplified versions of advanced equations that described dimensional physics and quantum mechanics. The humans were teaching us basic concepts while hiding their true understanding of the universe. The implications were staggering. If humanity had been deliberately concealing their capabilities, what else had they been hiding? The galactic intelligence networks began re-examining centuries of data, looking for signs of human influence that had been previously overlooked. The results painted a picture of a civilization that had been quietly shaping galactic events while remaining completely invisible, trade routes that had mysteriously become more efficient over the past century showed signs of subtle manipulation. The improvements had appeared gradually, making them seem like natural developments rather than deliberate interventions. Scientific breakthroughs that had occurred simultaneously in multiple civilizations now appeared to be the result of carefully distributed information. Even some of the galaxy's most celebrated technological advances could be traced back to discoveries that had originated from the supposedly primitive Earth. Admiral Stone's final transmission to the galaxy carried across the stars with the authority of a civilization that no longer needed to hide its true nature. To all galactic civilizations, this is Admiral Stone of the Terran Defense Force. For 4 centuries, humanity has observed your development from our position in the Sol system. We have watched empires rise and fall, studied your technologies, and learned from your achievements and mistakes. The human admiral's words were accompanied by data packages that demonstrated the true extent of Earth's technological advancement. The information included detailed analyses of every major galactic civilization, showing that the humans had been monitoring and studying the galaxy with instruments that made conventional sensors seem like primitive tools. They had been recording everything, learning from every conflict, and preparing for eventual contact with species that might prove hostile. The most shocking revelation was that Earth had been actively helping galactic civilization develop in positive directions. The humans had been seeding improvements throughout the galaxy, sharing their innovations in ways that made other species believe they had developed the technologies themselves. They had prevented wars by subtly influencing diplomatic negotiations, improved scientific progress by providing hints and clues to researchers, and even enhanced trade efficiency by optimizing shipping routes, the demonstration against the Corvan Empire had been a carefully planned exercise designed to reveal Earth's true capabilities to the galaxy. The humans had allowed the most aggressive civilization in the local region to attack them, knowing that the resulting conflict would send a clear message about the consequences of unprovoked aggression. The Corvan fleet had been destroyed not out of malice, but as a necessary demonstration of humanity's ability to defend itself and its allies. Ambassador Rax of the Corvan Empire stood before the assembly with the weight of his civilization's defeat heavy on his shoulders. The humans didn't just defend themselves. They demonstrated complete technological superiority while showing restraint that prevented unnecessary casualties. They could have destroyed our entire fleet in minutes, but they chose to allow survivors to carry word of their capabilities back to the galaxy. The recordings from the battle showed that the human weapons had been calibrated to disable rather than destroy whenever possible. The quantum disruptors that had seemed so terrifying were actually precision instruments that could remove specific components from enemy vessels without harming their crews. The gravitational weapons had been designed to crush ship hulls while leaving life support systems intact. Even the temporal mines had been programmed to age metal and electronics while leaving biological material unaffected. The message from Earth was clear. Humanity possessed the technology to reshape the galaxy according to their will, but they chose to use that power responsibly. They had spent centuries working behind the scenes to make galactic civilization more peaceful and prosperous, asking for nothing in return except the freedom to develop without interference. The attack by the Corvan Empire had forced them to reveal their true nature, but their response had been measured and proportional. The galactic intelligence networks were already detecting signs of human presence in star systems that had been thought uninhabited. The hidden colonies and observation posts that Earth had established over the centuries were beginning to reveal themselves, showing the true extent of human expansion throughout the local region. The species that had appeared to be trapped in a single star system had actually been quietly spreading across hundreds of worlds. Dr. Kellen's final analysis painted a picture of a civilization that had approached galactic contact with unprecedented wisdom and patience. The humans understood something that we missed. Technological superiority means nothing without the wisdom to use it responsibly. They could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago, but they chose to help us develop instead. They turned their greatest strength into their greatest gift. The galactic response to Earth's revelation was swift and decisive. The major civilizations began broadcasting messages of friendship and cooperation toward the Sol system, hoping to establish positive relationships with a species that had proven itself capable of both devastating military power and remarkable restraint. The humans had earned the galaxy's respect through their actions, demonstrating that true strength came from the decision to protect rather than dominate. Earth's response was typically measured and thoughtful. Diplomatic channels that had been quietly established over the centuries were finally activated, allowing open communication between humanity and the galactic community. The humans offered to share their technological advances in exchange for cultural exchange and mutual cooperation. They proposed joint scientific endeavors, collaborative exploration missions, and mutual defense agreements that would benefit all participants. The quiet world had revealed itself to be the galaxy's most powerful civilization. But more importantly, it had proven itself to be the most worthy of trust. The trap that had destroyed the Corvan invasion fleet had been designed not to conquer, but to teach. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were those who chose not to fight, and the most valuable allies were those who had the power to dominate but chose to cooperate instead. The age of human isolation was ending. But the galaxy was discovering that Earth's greatest gift had never been its technology. It had been its wisdom, and that wisdom would guide galactic civilization toward a future that none of them could have imagined alone.